This weekend from the Rochester Press Box at Salvatore's Pizzeria from the historic Garage Door Restaurant.
This is Curt Smith, and this week I'm going to tell you why the Boston Red Sox bungled beyond belief by letting Jacoby Ellsbury decamp to the hated New York Yankees.
And I'm John DiTullio. Super Bowl coming to Buffalo. I'm going to quote RFK and tell you why it's possible.
And I'm Mike Catalana. You know the saying, opinions are like noses? Yeah, I'm not saying any more than that.
And I'm Bill Pucko on Meeting Mallory Edens. Join us this weekend in the Rochester Press Box. The Rochester Press Box is brought to you by Salvatore's at the Garage Door, Rochester's choice winner for Best Pizzeria, featuring Wacky Wing Wednesday and the Super Slice. It's as big as your head. The games are always on at the Garage Door, home to the Rochester Press Box. Hello everyone and welcome to Salvatore's Pizzeria here at the historic Garage Door Restaurant, East Ridge Road in Irondequoit. I'm Bill Pucko, joined as always, John DiTullio, WHTK Sports Director, 13 WHAM News, Mike Catalana, and back as the only representative of our panel that has never owned a cell phone, Curt Smith. Nice to have you here.
I did, but I lost it.
Hey, before we get started, congratulations to Soccer Sam on getting the Rochester Lancers and being one of the founding fathers of the Major Arena Soccer League, which, John, the last count was, what, 24 teams?
24. Sammy said it could grow to 30 by October. So
major step in the progression of indoor soccer in the United States.
I think, Sam, now with bigger markets, now in Mexico, they're thinking big, an indoor World Cup. And I think what will save the league and help them thrive will be a TV deal. I think it's paramount they get a TV deal. If they can
Which is
get
why
it,
you're in so many cities.
How are these cities going to maintain it? Well, we'll find out. But if Sammy's behind it and believes in it, then 9 times out of 10 it's going to succeed.
All right, here in the Rochester Press Box, Curt, the NFL lawsuit where there's like 500, most of them unnamed players, are attempting to sue the league for the distribution of illegal painkillers. What's your feeling on that?
Well, I think it could be potential trouble in River City for the National Football League. You've got 8 plaintiffs here, among them Richard Dent and Jim McMahon of the world champion 85 Chicago Bears, Jerome Newberry, who was once an outstanding linebacker as well. And they're basically saying we are representing more than 500 NFL players. They're basically saying that during their careers, that physicians and team doctors in the NFL misprescribed drugs for them, gave them pain-killing drugs, which enabled them to play, yes, benefiting the team, but contributed to short-term problems in terms of health, and moreover, and this is key, long-term health problems now for players in their 30s and 40s. And the players are saying these were administered to them without any hint whatever of the long-term health consequences. In fact, they are suggesting that they were lied to by the physicians employed by the NFL teams themselves in terms of what these drugs would do regarding long-term health.
Many facets to this story, aren't there?
I'm with the players on this one because I believe that the NFL is a arrogant league and they control everything, including the team doctors. And I believe the goal of those teams is to get that guy on the field. And maybe even that your doctor or my doctor or Curt's doctor might say, geez, this would be a better route to take. They're not worried. They're worried about getting him out on the field on Sunday. I believe some of that has changed with the whole concussion thing in recent years, but the idea of take this, don't worry, you can play. And all those drugs do, for the most part, is mask the pain that really is the signal to get you off the field. And I believe this was strictly team-based to get that guy on the field.
I had a conversation with Thurman Thomas about a year ago, and he knew he was hurt and shouldn't have been out. Was told not to play, but he said, Jim Kelly would play. I got to be out there. So I think the players have got to take some responsibility in this thing, because if they were going to sit and tell a guy, you're not playing today because of this, I think they would say, shoot me up, which was the culture then. I'm playing.
Yes, but
so but Keith Van Horn being told not being told he has a broken leg, we glorify Jack Youngblood, who played with a broken leg in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but teams took advantage of this. Jim McMahon says that he played an entire season with a broken neck. Whether he knew this, whether he did not know this, and the team did not tell him, which would be, it seems to me, a conspiracy of malfeasance. You're right that there was a tackle that said that he played an entire season with a broken leg. But I think this potentially is far more injurious and perhaps lethal to the NFL than concussion. The concussion suit, the NFL offered $765 million, which is a pittance. That's like a nickel to the rest of us, given the empire. Exactly. And now it's being relitigated. I think this has much more potential to be long-term big trouble for the NFL, because if it can be shown that any of these doctors lied on behalf of the NFL, this has enormous, not simply immoral aspects, but illegal as well.
I've used the phrase with you, and it's the NFL phrase, and I think it's number one in that league. Your best ability is your availability. That is the culture of the NFL. Get on the field, and they would do it any way possible. To John's point, yes, there should be some responsibility of the players. Now the question is how much responsibility.
It'll be interesting because the immediate reaction from experts all across, the networks of the people that we hear about is a pushback from the players saying this is the way we wanted it, and they're not on the side of this lawsuit. It's kind of interesting. Tanaka loses Japanese influence in Major League Baseball. We'll talk about that next. Welcome back to the Rochester Press Box, Salvatore's Pizzeria at the historic Garage Door Restaurant. Bill Pucko with John DiTullio, Mike Catalana. Curt, we didn't give you a proper introduction. I'm reading Mercy right now. You're obviously an accomplished author. What do you got going?
Well, I've got a book on my former boss, Bush 41, which will be out in November. George H.W. Bush, character at the core. Good. And, I'll be out vending that, as it were. And he's turning 90 years old next month. Just one of the great Americans of our time.
American hero.
Well, if you look at polling data, he's an appreciated American hero. His approval rating has skyrocketed into the stratosphere over the last couple decades. I think some of his successors have contributed to that, and I think also a belated approval and appreciation of what he did and what he meant, ending communism, Eastern Europe freed, among other things. Better late than never, at least in his life, and I think those of us who worked for him are certainly grateful for that.
Very good. John, Masahiro Tanaka lost a game.
Believe it or not, he hasn't lost a game in 2 years. As far as I'm concerned, I think most Yankee fans, when people watch baseball, he's almost exceeded expectations. We've always heard the big buzz, whether it's Daisuke Matsuzaka or Kei Igawa or Hideki Arabu, or even Yu Darvish, who even exceeded my expectations. But I think when you look at Tanaka, he is definitely one of the best pitchers in baseball. You can look at him, Johnny Cueto. I think Tanaka is one of the best. And he gets roughed up in Chicago. But with him going every 4 or 5 days, you're not going to look at lengthy losing streaks for the Yankees.
I think the problem he ran into, you go up against that powerhouse Cubs lineup and anybody can lose. Seriously, the Cubs? Really? That's the place he loses?
Team. 42 starts when he was 34-0. He loses to the Cubs.
I saw Derek Jeter with Ernie Banks this week, and Banks looks pretty good. Maybe the Cubs should try him again at shortstop.
We talk about Japanese ball players, and you take it way back to the first guy.
Well,
it was considered AAA ball in Japan.
This was 1964, the San Francisco Giants, Masanori Murakami, who was a pitcher, and he seemed an alien species at the time. Imagine someone from the Orient, someone from Japan. Keep in mind, this was 19 years only since American Douglas MacArthur had stood on the ship in Tokyo Harbor.
War II reference.
And basically, and then had become chief consul over Japan. So really, it's a very varied game. I won't call it diverse because that word has been used and beaten to death. But it is quite varied, and I think baseball is better for it.
Yeah. So maybe Australia's next. Somewhere they're going to find the next Japan is somewhere out there, right?
Yeah.
Like it or not, when we return. Welcome back to Salvatore's at the Garage Door Restaurant. Wacky Wings Wednesday and Friday live music. John DiTullio will be doing trivia come football season in the fall. Like it or not, Curt, how about those 2014 Red Sox?
I like the 13 Red Sox much better. I think it's a classic case of arrogance by the Sox front office. A lot of the players had their best years of the career last year, and the Sox mistakenly thought, well, we can expect another best year of the career this year. That doesn't happen. Plus, the Red Sox, in their infinite wisdom, decided not to sign Stephen Drew at shortstop, an enormous mistake. And the biggest mistake of all, in center field, Jacoby Ellsbury last year and for the 4 or 5 years prior had given the Sox a unique set of skills that they had never had, not in my lifetime and never, frankly, in franchise history. Speed, throwing, power, hit with power, and the ability to have a great average as well. And he, not simply him, but the synergy through the Red Sox lineup that he basically forged. They had allowed him to go to New York, $30 million, and they could have kept him over 7 years. It would have been a very good investment. They have had no one in center field to replace him, and they have suffered inordinately, and there's still no one that they can have. Now, failing baseball, agreeing that it can be played with 8 men instead of 9 men on the field, I think the Red Sox are in an enormous hole facing the rest of the year.
Where do they finish?
Right now, they finished 3rd or 4th.
John, has Ellsbury been a real plus for the Yankees?
Well, I think so. I mean, if they ever get their lineup, I think Teixeira, to me, has been the biggest surprise. I mean, Ellsbury, as Curt just alluded to, he's going to be great throughout the year if he can stay healthy. But to me, 2 people. Solarte has been Roy Hobbs, came out of nowhere. And Mark Teixeira is now healthy and swinging a good bat. But no Sabathia, no Ivan Nova. You don't know when Pineda's coming back. The starting staff, besides Tanaka, is basically pus in that rotation. Pus.
Favorite sports term?
It is. It's pus right now. Baltimore will win the AL East.
I was going to say, I like the Orioles.
I like the Orioles. I like Nelson Cruz is hitting. Now they've got Manny Machado back finally in the
Chris
lineup.
Davis with the most fluid and graceful swing in
leaders.
baseball.
Britton keeps pitching that way, and they've got Hunter closing games, and Tillman.
Something Yankees and Red Sox can agree on. They both like the Orioles.
Your turn.
Isn't that
By,
nice?
like last
exactly.
week. Michael, like it or not, Minnesota gets another Super Bowl.
I was there in '92 for that Super Bowl, coldest I've ever been in my life for the week. But that city is equipped for the cold weather. Everything's inside. You can go the whole downtown inside those walkways. We were never treated better at a Super Bowl, all the ones I've been at, than the people in Minneapolis. I think Indianapolis was similar to that a few years ago. I just spent the week in New York for that Super Bowl. It was freezing the whole week, and then the game wasn't bad. Game's going to be in a beautiful dome. I'm all for it. I think those kind of cities are great. They built the stadium. I think it's fine. I've also been in Jacksonville for a Super Bowl where the weather was brutal most of the week for Florida, 58 degrees and raining. So you weren't doing anything great outside anyhow.
I can't believe they're going to actually get it done. They're the only football team that went from one dump to another, the Met to the Metrodome. Yeah. That's unprecedented. Go from one dump hole to another.
So does logic follow, you think, Mike, here? If Buffalo, when and if they get the new stadium, are they in the running for a Super Bowl?
Well, I would say they would have to be, boy, this is a real stretch, in the conversation, because you can't say around the whole league that these cities can't. Build Buffalo up enough? I guess. I don't know how much public support you're going to get for Buffalo. I mean, it's not quite like going to Chicago or New York. It's
depending where you put it, can you use those luxury liners, put that in Lake Erie?
I'm going to save it for the end. I'm doing something on my ending little pitch here. I'm going to make a pitch. And I'm going to make a quote. I hope I get my quote right, only because Curt Smith is here. That's a professional tease, Billy.
That is. Johnny, like it or not, draft lotteries. Ping pong balls.
No. I mean, listen. I think I can't remember what soccer league it is. Maybe it's the Premier League. I'm thinking where the best teams are rewarded. Can you imagine if the Miami Heat wins the championship and they get the first round? Should we reward people who do well? If you think about it, I mean, the lottery in the NBA came in 1985. I get it. The NFL doesn't do the lottery. Major League Baseball doesn't do the lottery. NHL is now kind of going to that format. Cleveland has the first overall pick now 3 of the last 4 years, and they've done nothing with it. Nothing with it whatsoever. So I wouldn't mind if they went back to pre-1985. But I would like to see a wild idea. Teams who win and succeed be rewarded, rather than teams that stink and are mismanaged. All right? Basically, not be rewarded.
I think it's because, well, the reason the NBA does it, and even the NHL, I think, is because one player can be that impactful. Every once in a while, we get an Andrew Luck or maybe a John Elway, but for the most part, in the first round, you're going to get quality players and teams want to be there. In the NBA, when LeBron James comes out, there is that crush to get that guy.
I put them all in. Yeah, I think that would deter teams from throwing games.
Well, you could do it that way.
Everybody was in there, waited, but throw everybody in there.
Reinstate the Larry Bird rule by Red Auerbach. Draft a kid while he's still in school.
And then wait for him.
Interesting. He did that with Larry Bird.
Yeah. Unfinished business when we return. Welcome back to the Rochester Press Box here from Salvatore's Pizzeria, Garage Door Restaurant, tremendous sports bar. We invite you to come down here. Unfinished business, John.
I love what I heard this past week from the NFL owners' meetings in Atlanta. You had John Mara from the Giants, you had Woody Johnson from the Jets, and even had Mark Murphy, who is a Clarence native, all in support of the Bills staying in Western New York. As we just talked in our last segment, the Vikings in Minnesota will be hosting a Super Bowl in 2018. In fact, Super Bowl 52. Never dreamed that the Vikings would ever get a new stadium. Now, when you look at the size of Minneapolis and St. Paul, much larger than Buffalo, about 600,000 people in the city. And when you look in the surrounding counties, about 3.5 million. Could Buffalo ever get a Super Bowl if and when our fearless leaders of this state can get a stadium deal done? Why not? The one big issue is hotel space. I actually went online and looked up. If you add in Niagara Falls, you add in Buffalo, you add in Rochester, you're looking at 36,000 hotel space or hotel rooms, which the NFL requires a city to have 25,000. So there you go. The hotel space is there, not to mention Terry Pagula is building a castle in downtown Buffalo. The other issue would be weather. Really, they're playing the game in Minneapolis. Does it get any colder than in Minneapolis during the month of January, if not February? You know, I'm going to quote, only because Curt is here, I'm going to quote the late, great RFK. That's right, Robert Kennedy. There are those who look at things the way they are and ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask why not? Why not Buffalo for Super Bowl 64? I don't know when it's going to happen. If Buffalo gets a new stadium, and that's a prayer, no pun intended with John Bon Jovi, but I believe Buffalo will be rewarded with a Super Bowl.
It'd need to be a dome, though, wouldn't it?
A dome.
Yeah.
It's same thing Minnesota's getting.
Right.
It's $1 billion. All of us could chip in, and then a retractable roof. But I'm saying, you know, why not? Let's think big. I think something this area has never done is actually think big and execute it. Let's see if we can pull it off.
You got to follow RFK, Curt.
Well, it's a great quote by RFK, and I'm sure us chipping in will make all the difference. President Obama was at the Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum in Cooperstown this week, and a good time was had by all. This coming Friday, I'll be at the Hall of Fame talking about U.S. presidents and baseball at the Hall of Fame's annual symposium on baseball and American culture. It's a fascinating litany. The first president to observe a baseball game was Abraham Lincoln. Probably the greatest student of baseball was Richard Nixon. The president to throw out the first and most balls at the presidential inaugural was Franklin Roosevelt. The president to throw out balls left and right-handed was Harry Truman. Yogi Berra would have said he's amphibious. George Herbert Walker Bush was probably the best athlete to play baseball. But I think probably the greatest fact to be known is that George W. Bush was once asked his favorite program on television, and he answered in the most erudite way as only he could. He said, "Baseball tonight on ESPN."
All right, I'm funny to be saying this on an opinion show because we're all giving our opinions on everything involving sports. But I have no more opinion on everybody having an opinion. And here's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about on every subject known to man. I'm talking about on every forum known. I'm talking about everyone having an opinion on everything. I don't care what it is. I reached my breaking point the other day when there wasn't just opinion, but over-the-top opinion on the new toy put in the McDonald's Happy Meals. Do you have so little going on in your life that not just do you say it's ugly or I don't like it, you go on and on and on. Read any story done by any of us or any other person on any subject known to man. There are 800 comments on it. Trivial matters. Argue about sports. Argue about things going on that are important in life, whatever level of importance. But every opinion does not have to be the end of the world opinion on every subject. I know Twitter, Facebook, everything else gives us our opportunity But just because you have an opportunity doesn't mean you have to give it. And that's my opinion.
This one sort of follows along that line. I knew on Wednesday morning, as far as the NBA draft lottery, that Cleveland had won it, and that the Celtics had won 6th and the Lakers 7th. Nice job fixing the lottery, too, by the way, boys. But there was a note beside the article I was reading that said, the real winner in the NBA draft lottery. So I thought, well, I don't know, maybe there's some good news for Boston here. So I clicked it, and Mallory Eden's picture shows up. This is the daughter of the new Milwaukee Bucks owner, Wesley Edens, who went up there to represent the Bucks in the lottery. I give her full marks for knowing who Julius Erving was. She was standing right beside me. Says it was a real thrill to meet and be standing beside Julius Erving. But she's an 18-year-old high school student. What could she possibly have to offer? Well, that night she began with 250 Twitter followers. By the next morning, that number had gone over 30,000, and it certainly has doubled since then at the time that this thing airs. I think we're about to find out. We record the Rochester Press Box here from Salvatore's Pizzeria every Wednesday afternoon at 12:30. We invite you to come down, meet the guys, have lunch. John, thank you as always.
Billy, good stuff.
Mike, good work.
Thanks.
Curt, a pleasure as
My
always.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.